My name is Nava Israel, and I am the founder of Fusion Global Education, which is a consulting company. And with me we have Dan, and Dan is a program manager at the Language Education for Accounting Professions. Today, our talk, our presentation is really about a tool that we have developed for physiotherapists and occupational therapists who are arriving in Canada and need to be assessed for their language and communication skills. And we thought that it really works well with this conference, which is about assessing competencies, which is about converting credentialing processes into PLAR processes and sort of migrating it into acknowledging people's talents and skills in more progressive ways. So what is the issue that's on the table here? So just to give you a heads up, this presentation is color-coded. And the purpose is, if you don't like reading lengthy sentences, you'll just focus on the red and blue, okay? So the purpose of the issue here is that language and communication are heavily culture-driven. So it is not so much about the mastery of the mechanics of the language, so much as how do you use the language within a cultural context. Employers do tell us over and over again that the major barrier to hiring international talent is language, but not just the language, but really the culture-driven use of language within communication, soft skills, etc. Now, whether it's realistic or perceived, that is debatable, probably a little bit of both, because we also know that Canadian employers can be very picky about the level of language, and often they require a higher language that would actually be required to perform the job. But we do know that when we look at the regulated realm, there are pretty well established in most professions the levels of communication that you need to demonstrate in order to practice your profession effectively and safely. The other issue is that immigrants have very little awareness of their own need for language and exactly what level of language and communication they actually need in order to practice effectively and safely within the Canadian workplace environment. So all these coming together are really important.
More to both those points. As far as the employers perceiving these barriers, I think it's oftentimes it's a misperception. Employers say, my staff needs more listening skills, or they may attribute it to something that isn't exactly what they want to get at. And that's mostly because they're uninformed themselves, or unaware, uneducated in the area of communication skills, which is understandable. And what things like this assessment hope to do is focus, give them more clear vision of what areas there are weaknesses and strengths in, so they can make some decisions.
Very true. So we will be jumping back and forth between the two of us. That's normal. And just to along the same lines, really, we know that a lot of employers, when we interview them as to what are the barriers for hiring, they say language. But when you do an in-depth interview of what that means, they are actually speaking about critical thinking skills, clinical reasoning skills, and other communication skills which are not language per se.
And culturally derived behaviors, like this person is really shy, or things they're perceiving as one thing, but they're coming out of a different direction that they're not aware of.
Mm-hmm. And so why not use just any language assessment? Of course, there are a lot of language assessments out there, highly researched and standardized, and so why develop yet another one? So there are a few reasons. One is that most language assessments focus truly on the mechanics of the language versus the use of the language, the contextual use of the language. Most assessments are very limited in their transparency. You can see examples on the web, and you can even take courses to prepare yourself for the test, which is sort of a strange thing. But in reality, when you get the results, all you get are 4 numbers, right? 4 digits. Speaking, reading, writing, listening. That's it. You don't know how you were assessed. You don't know what the standards were. You don't know what tools were used, etc. So there's very little information that really goes in there. And again, no assessment of communication competencies, which are the essence that we're looking for.
With those very limited set of feedback, you're kind of lost as to where you need to improve on. So if you do have a low listening skills, okay, what does that look like, and what does it look like to improve, and where's the target, and how do I get there? It's not really helpful feedback at all. It's just saying you didn't make it. It's no different than saying pass or fail.
So, and the issue of relevance as well. When we invite professionals to immigrate in Canada because we need them as professionals, but they write a generic language test, often people complain, and I've engaged many years, and Dan as well, in developing training programs and bridging programs for internationally educated professionals. And the complaint is recurring, saying, you know, don't look at the results of that test, because, you know, they were asking questions about astronomy and, you know, botany, and I'm an accountant. You know, I want a test that will assess my functioning within an accounting context. So it's not relevant. The test was not relevant. And in fact, we do see that people function differently and communicate differently within their own contextual professional environment versus environments that are new and unfamiliar to them and irrelevant to their practice. Why specialized assessment? So, first of all, as we said, people immigrate from other cultures. Now, that is not just a title. There's a deep essence to what it means to immigrate from a very different culture, in the sense of how you relate to your environment, how you communicate with your environment, how you perceive situations, how you analyze them in your head, how you decide to respond to them by communicating through these situations. So even people who immigrated from source countries where they were speaking English or they were educated in English would still struggle with communication within a professional context in Canada, within their own profession, simply because communication happens differently in Canada culturally. Things that, another reason is, again, the communication skills. It's not just the language, and as we said, people who do have excellent language don't always communicate well within this culture. And the third thing is, again, the relevant environment. We communicate differently within our profession than outside of it. Our project was commissioned by 3 organizations: the Canadian Alliance of Physiotherapy Regulators, the College of Occupational Therapists of Ontario, and the College of Physiotherapists of Ontario. This project aimed to develop a tool that is all this. So they wanted a tool that is able to assess the CLB language levels. If for anyone here who is not aware of CLB, CLB is the Canadian Language Benchmarks, and it is a standard across Canada that has been well researched and established and is used by many organizations, regulatory bodies, and it is a scale between 1 and 12, and usually most professions are looking at levels of 8 and above. So the CLB scale, a tool that is able to assess communication and soft skills, not just the language, a tool that will be fully online to create accessibility, competency-based, standardized, experiential and interactive so that people aren't falling asleep when they're doing it, profession-specific that serves both professions, transparent, and sustainable, okay? So these were our specifications. That's just to give you an idea of the scope that we're looking at in this assessment. So if you're thinking about what it is that we need as a professional to practice safely and effectively, we're looking at the big, so think of this as, you know, the Russian dolls, the babushka that go one inside of the other. So the big one is the professional skills, which is all inclusive, which is our knowledge and how we communicate and how we comport ourselves, etc., as a professional. But if we start from the small one, there's a grain of fundamental language skills. Now, although I speak highly of communication skills and soft skills, of course we can't do any of it if we don't have fundamental language skills, because that is the building bricks of everything that we do in communication. So you know, obviously fundamental language skills are essential and need to be assessed, but not only that. We are looking at advanced language and communication skills, so everything that has to do with communicating, with the back and forth with other people. So it's how we communicate with others, how we understand others communicating with us. Then these two are embedded within a bigger realm, which we call enabling or soft skills. The soft skills is a very soft word that people tend to frown upon because it's so soft. So I think enabling skills is probably a better description because it is what enables us to do everything else, to use our professional skills, to communicate, to think, etc. And the enabling skills include more than just the communication, the back and forth between people. It includes how we, our attitudes, how responsible, our professional behavior, our critical thinking, strategic planning. So things that happen inside of us as well as things that we produce outwards.
And to be clear about this, the last part, the professional skills. So this is the jargon and the profession-specific language that people use on the job. As part of our mandate for this project, they weren't interested in us testing this area, which is good for us. Mm-hmm. So essentially what we had to do was cover everything in this diagram except the professional skills area where they're talking in their regular jargon and experience. They have other assessments, mm-hmm. other very comprehensive assessments for individuals taking those type of to test their professional skills. They were just interested in communication, soft skills, language, and mm-hmm. advanced communication skills.
And the other thing, just to emphasize on this, the reason we didn't go, so our assessment sort of includes all the blue and bluish circles in there. It doesn't include the professional skills. And because the professional skills are knowledge-driven mostly, we didn't want to muddy the water with what is it that we are assessing. So if someone didn't know, weren't able to answer a question, was it because they didn't know the professional content or because they couldn't communicate it in English or because they... So we made sure that as we developed the assessment, although what is it you say about the duck? If it quacks and whatever. I'm an internationally educated professional, so it's not there, not all there yet. Yeah, but the thing is, it smells, it feels, it is physiotherapy and occupational therapy, but in fact, a nurse could take the test and pass. A dietitian could take the test, an engineer could as well, because it is about, so we are providing all the knowledge that people need in order to feed back into and respond and be professional, but we don't require people to actually bring prior knowledge in physiotherapy and occupational therapy. For that, there are other tests, OSCEs, etc., that these professions are applying. So that we needed to make sure that we're not confusing one with the other. So how do we approach it philosophically and methodologically? To make sure that we have an adequate level and scope, first of all, we used a language benchmarking. So we were very lucky for our clients to be very organized and well planned throughout this project. And the first step before we stepped in to design the tool itself is that they did a professional benchmarking of the language, which means what level of language do entry-level physiotherapists and occupational therapists are required to use and understand in order to practice effectively. And so it was a very extensive document that provided us with a variety of scenarios within the day of a physiotherapist and occupational therapist, and the types of events and tasks and which level of CLB these tasks are related to. So this is truly an essential component of building such a tool if you want to assess CLB levels. You wouldn't necessarily need it if all you need is communication levels. But if you need CLB levels, this is an essential step before you do anything else, is to understand what are the cutoffs. What is the minimum requirement for speaking, reading, writing, listening?
Yeah, so the process involved job shadowing, where they would have individuals trained from the CCLB to go follow physiotherapists, occupational therapists throughout the day and document all the readings tasks they do, all the listening tasks they do, all the speaking and writing tasks they do, and after recording all these many different tasks, analyzing the information to see, okay, they need to do this at this level, it seems, and document, and actually adding a number, a CLB number to each of the tasks.
Mm-hmm. And that greatly informed the kinds of tasks that we would incorporate in the assessment so that it truly reflects daily activity of both professions. The other thing was consultation and development with SMEs. That's not small, medium businesses. This is subject matter experts. So we had 3 subject matter experts from each profession. Each of the 3 within each profession was recruited from a different area of practice, so that areas of practice are represented and both professions are represented. And we worked with these SMEs, who are an excellent team, to actually create scenarios and write the events and the tasks that the participants will eventually have to respond to.
As much as the language benchmarking made this job easy, working with 2 different professions for one assessment made it difficult. So
yeah,
they kind of balance each other out.
Absolutely.
Where every question that we put out would have to say, is this something that both physiotherapists and occupational therapists would do? Because these are the people who will be writing tests. And while the professions are similar, they had some different approaches for a lot of things.
And it's not just do they both do it, but would they both respond in the same way? Because as we are developing answer keys and assessment standards, we need to make sure that it is something that no matter which profession responds to it, they are required to respond in a similar way. So there was a lot of that marrying the 2 professions to make sure it fully it is relevant for both.
And even within a single profession, not all occupational therapists do the same job. Not all physiotherapists are in the same environment. So it was a tough time picking tasks that would be applicable to everybody, more generic within the profession.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The other thing was, of course, in the post-pilot evaluation, where we asked for perceived adequacy of the level, and we did it throughout. We did it with the management and with the SMEs, and so we tested both Canadian educated professionals and internationally educated professionals to see, is this a bit too difficult? Is it terribly easy? Is it just right? So that, again, we start calibrating where we stand in terms of the adequacy and the scope. And, of course, revisions and adaptations based on the feedback that we've received throughout. Relevant. So first of all, professional tasks. Completely, and to the point where we asked our SMEs to bring cases, examples, emails, memos, voice messages catalogs. From their work, catalogs, whatever, from their workplace, so that everything is absolutely on the ground and current, not outdated. Situational language and communication. So of course, I can speak with one level of fluency when I speak about something I'm comfortable with. I can stutter when I'm not comfortable with something. I can have one level of fluency with a client that's all nice and peachy and everything is going well, but if there's resistance, I might freeze. So I may write really well, short emails, but if I need to write a letter of request for insurance, that's a whole different type of writing. So we made sure that every language skill, the reading, writing, listening, and speaking, are tested within at least 2 different situations, within 2 different contexts, and usually much, much more than 2.
Usually 2 per benchmark level. So if we say different tasks require different difficulty. Filling out a simple form on the computer is a really easy form of reading and writing, whereas writing a letter to a social worker is more complicated. So for each level that we were looking at for a score, we had at least 2 different areas where we could draw from to say, yeah, they've made it here, maybe not here, and come up with an average.
Yep. So it's really, again, it's both to assess a variety of contexts of practice, but also to give a fair chance to people who feel a bit more comfortable here, less comfortable there, so that their assessment of any single competency and or language domain are not hanging on a single task or event that they happen not to be, comfortable with. Threaded competency assessment again, and maybe I'll skip for a minute for the next slide just to show you. So each competency was assessed through multiple tasks. And the reason we call it threaded is because it's the same competency, but it is assessed through, for example, critical thinking was by far the one that we assessed through everything we could because of the complexity of assessing critical thinking and what it means. So it was a component that we've assessed when they wrote an email, when they wrote a patient note, when they provided professional information, when they persuaded a colleague, when they analyzed professional information, when they left a voice message. So we checked throughout, and then we pulled it out of each of these tasks and averaged it and found, okay, so on average, how do you do in each of your competencies? And we had, I believe, 5 major competencies that we've assessed. We tested both Canadian and internationally educated professionals to check for adequacy, for validity, to see that indeed people who are registered. We also tested internationally educated professionals who are already registered and who are not yet registered. So we wanted to see whether people who are registered can actually pass the test. It was very important in terms of the validity. Or if everyone gets 100, that's the problem as well. Reliable and consistent. So first of all, the majority of the test is automated. So there are multiple choice questions, and there's true and false questions. And so whatever we could create in an automated way, we did. But of course, not everything is automated because there's only so much, and we also wanted to use many blended methods of assessment, so we don't disadvantage people who are less comfortable with one method versus another. So but even those that weren't automated were standardized by using rubrics, and you will see towards the end. I'll show you what a rubric looks like. So that it is as standardized as soft skills can get, right? To the point where everything is subjective, as we said yesterday and the day before. Objective as much as possible. So again, competency-based rubrics. Our assessors were trained, and we did the inter-rater reliability by having at least 2 assessors assessing the same test and comparing scores. We had people who were participants who wrote the test twice within a period of 2 weeks apart, writing different versions of the test because the test has multiple versions. So we did all this to make sure it's as reliable as possible. Transparent. So first of all, part of this tool is a website. So, and it is a website which we'll walk you through it briefly to show you what it looks like. But it provides detailed information about what the test is about, what's on the test, what's going to happen on the day of the test, and it even has a demo of the test with very detailed explanations. I'm hoping to show you, if the web connection doesn't fail us, of how detailed the demo is, where the audio that comes with the demo really explains what are the uses of these tasks within this profession, where, you know, that physiotherapists and occupational therapists are using it. What are the standards of performance, how they will be assessed on this task, what qualities or what strengths, or in other words, what competencies we will be looking at, and what it means in terms of how their behavior needs to be. So that it is as transparent as we could get without posting the rubrics. And that too was an option. But from our experience with previous projects of bridging programs, when people who are unfamiliar with assessment tools and unfamiliar with competencies, when they see a fully narrated rubric, it freaks people out, because it's such a lengthy, detailed document that people just feel desperate. But walking people through what are the sort of competent practices is very helpful, as we found by the feedback of our participants. Yeah. So assessment criteria, so again, they know how they are assessed and why. The test is built on an incremental level of difficulty for each of the competencies and language domains. So it starts with tasks that are fairly basic, very simple, you know, read a phone message, you know, that someone scribbled and left you, and let's see if you understand it, and, you know, listen to a short voice message, then listen to a long voice message, and then leave a voice message. So it's sort of an incremental level, both to make people more comfortable, but even more so to allow us to assess how far can people go versus how deeply they fail. So this is the difference, I guess, between, let's say, a registration exam, where you have a single bar where people either pass or they fail, and, you know, they fail however they fail, versus this type of an assessment, which really tries to say how high they can get on each of the language domains and communication competencies, so that the feedback that we provide people who take this assessment is constructive and informative and helpful, by telling them, here are the tasks, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, I'll show you later on what the report looks like and what it includes and how informative it is. So rigorous and secure, again, we have a system that the way we deliver it, people's identities is authenticated. We have 12 versions of the test, which are randomized as people log in to take the test. So they get a random selection out of the 12 versions. Each version differs from all others by a minimum of 50% of the tasks. And just to give you an idea, there are 19 tasks in each of the tests, so 50% difference is quite a bit of difference. So basically the way we've achieved it is each task, and as I said, we have 19 tasks, was developed in 4 versions, different versions, but the same task. 4 different voice messages, 4 different letters, 4 different memos, etc., at the same level of difficulty, the same length, the same level of CLB, etc., etc. And then 3 of them go into the test versions, and they are they're not randomized, they're selected in a way that there are 12 different versions that differ by at least 50%. And then the 4th is for the demo, as we said earlier, where people can actually try it. It's secure, FIPA and PIPEDA. It is accessible, again, informative. It is scalable because it's online and there's no limit to how many people can take it all at once, wherever they are, and cumulatively. And the fees are affordable based on our latest calculation. To cover costs, it would, depending on how you decide to deliver it in-house or with testing centers, what have you, it will range anywhere between $180 to $250 per test taker to cover costs, which is very reasonable in terms of for a test that lasts 4 hours and covers so much ground. So again, we wanted it was very important for us for this tool to be sustainable financially, and it should be, because it is centralized. It can be delivered in a centralized manner, so you need a single body or a single center that can provide that same test across Canada for both professions, so long as everyone agrees that this is the test they want. And in our case, the clients came to us saying, we want a single test for everyone. There are, of course, economies of scale, especially when you're looking at smaller professions. So physiotherapy is a fairly big profession. Occupational therapy is a small profession. I'm sure you can think of many other smaller professions where a tool can be very expensive if you have to administer it on your own with your 1.5 full-time or maybe 0.5 full-time staff. So when you have all the provinces and maybe more than one profession using it, the chances for you to sustain it are much greater. How is it delivered? So the test is about 3 to 4 hours long. For people who have great comfort with English, it takes normally up to 2 hours.
2 hours or 2.5, yeah.
2.5 hours for people who need more time or struggle. It never took more than 4 hours for anyone to complete, even for people who didn't meet the minimum language requirement. It is, again, fully web-based. What it requires is, and I'll show you how it's structured visually. So we have different test sites, and the test sites can be the registrar's office if you have a computer and a headset and a webcam, or a laptop with a webcam and a recording device, or a microphone. But it's probably more useful to do it in test sites, again, depending on the volumes you're dealing with on a regular basis. If it's high volumes, test sites are better because they are equipped to do it. They have the staff there. Even agencies, so community agencies, colleges, anyone who has some kind of a computer lab or a computer room that you can come to an agreement with, a service agreement, it can be delivered there because there's no need for any specialized talent on site. What we have is test administrators, and they have a manual on the website, and you guide them, and there's nothing much that they do. They're invigilators, basically. And then everything is, all the files are uploaded on at the back end of the system, and an assessor or assessors who are sitting wherever they are sitting in Canada or outside are accessing the files, assessing, putting in the scores, pressing enter, and then immediately it is posted on the website with secure access to the participants, so the participants can get their reports from the website using their email address and the password that they have selected during the test. And the central admin, who can be the regulator, the employer, whoever uses this test or administers the test, has a back-end entry to see all the reports, the outcomes, etc. So it's a very quick system in the sense that if you have all your ducks in a row and the assessor is waiting, the assessment itself per person is about an hour work. For an experienced assessor, it's about an hour's work. So it's for all the files that have been submitted, the audio files, the video files, the written materials, using the rubrics, which I'll show you how. And then, so technically speaking, outcomes can happen within the same day of the test because there's no administration happening in the middle. It's just a matter of how well organized you are as the administrating organization. Maybe I'll just skip a little bit. So we'll show you a short walkthrough. And we made slides instead of going on the website itself, just because we were worried about the connectivity. So we'll go on the website just to show you the demo later on. So this is the website where that is open to everyone, and it explains the context of the test and participants can go on the links, if you see at the top, learn more about occupational therapy, learn more about physiotherapy. So they go to the regulator's site to learn more about the professions, etc. Then if you click about the test, then there's a set of slides with explanations that really walks you through what happens throughout the test. You know, you register for the test, and then someone meets you, and someone greets you, and then you get an outcome report. Then if you click on sample reports, people can actually learn about what will be the output of this test. So but that is also a backdoor to explaining to people about the test and what the essence of it is, and so the language domain. So we explain to them what the CLB levels are, what it means, which levels they need to achieve to qualify for physiotherapy and occupational therapy in Canada. We provide them with a sample. Here's how the language domain report, if you see here, right, it's like they click on each of them and get the three different reports. So one is the language domain, as you can see, how much you did, what's required, is improvement required, and they can print out a full report. They can either view it online or print it. There's a task report. So here again, we give them a full listing of all the tasks or the assignments they will be doing throughout the test, and there are many more slides here. I just don't want to have you tired of that. And then this is a report that is a task report, so it's task by task. It scrolls down because there are 19 of them, and they can see how well they did in percentage on each of the tasks. And then there's the competency report. So here there are at least 5 slides that explain the concept of competencies. What competencies are, which competencies we are assessing, what competent behavior looks like. So the behavioral indicators, everything is in there for people to learn about competency. So it's a very informative tool. And the competency report, these are the competencies that are assessed throughout this assessment based on what our client needed and wanted, and based on their competency framework. And again, how well you did. So let's see if we can go into the test demo. That's what I was worried about.
How to logging into the system. On the day of the test, we advise that you arrive about 15 to 20 minutes early.
And so
this will allow enough time for the site
and
administrator
everything
to
that you need to bring
register
with
and
you
set
and
you
need
up
to
on a
do.
computer station.
And if you have
and for
no
you to make
patience,
your
you go next. And then it shows you task by task.
how to answering multiple choice questions.
So this
Every
is about the
task in this test
methodology, right?
includes
This is not
information
yet
that is provided to you up
any
front.
given
This
task,
is the information that you will
how
have
you
to
use
read
the
or
technology.
listen to in order to answer the questions that follow. Each of the questions will offer 5 possible answers. Only one of them is correct. If you wish to take another look at the background information, all you need to do is press the Show Reference button at the top right side of your screen. This will open a window with the information. Once you are done using it, press the same button again. This time it will be titled Hide Reference, and the window will close. You will be able to open this window as many.
I'll jump just because I know the time is...
Task 1. Reading a short phone message. This task involves reading a short telephone message.
So this is the very
Therapists
first
working
and
in a
basic
variety
task.
of professional settings regularly receive phone calls from clients, colleagues, sales representatives, and others. When the therapist is away, another staff member takes the call and leaves a short written note to provide the therapist with basic information on the call. In this task, you will read a telephone message left for you and answer 3 multiple-choice questions based on the information in the message.
And so, task by task, we are explaining what the uses are of this
4.
type of
Reviewing
task
staff memo.
and how it's assessed.
This task involves comprehending and integrating written information. Therapists have to read formal and informal emails sent to them by supervisors and coworkers on a daily basis. These messages sent to a number of readers are known as memos, and they are an important part of regular communication in the workplace. In this task, you will...
So we'll just skip a few. So they read an article, a professional article, they observe a meeting with a patient, and then they also have a simulation with a patient, which I would like to talk to you. So maybe I'll close it for now, and we'll continue so that we have enough time for questions. And if you wish to see more of it, we will provide you with the web link, and you feel free to go on it, and everything there it's an open source, right? So you can see it afterwards. So I also want to show you the site of the assessor. So this website has a login, and there are 3 distinctive logins that you can use. One is the login of the site administrator, so where the actual site where the test is taking place. So the site admin has they have their own access code, and they open, and what they can do is they register participants as they come. So they take their details, and they check their documents, and they write their addresses, and they let them pick a password, and they launch their test. Then you can log in as an assessor to mark and then you have a different kind of access and I will show you what you will see. Or you can log in as the central admin, so let's say the regulator, and that would be usually a single person or maybe 2 people who are authorized, because this is access to the back end of the machine. So this is the person who will be authorized to change content, to produce statistical reports, to look at all the information about the participants, etc. And of course, these are discrete levels of access to the 3 types of users. The participant can log in and launch the test when on site, but once the test is done, they will no longer be allowed or even have access to launch the test again from home because it closes. But they are then able to log in and view their report. So
they can't even launch the test themselves on site.
No,
because
they
it
can't.
requires a password from the administrator, the initiator.
So it's very well protected. So the assessor logs in, and what they see is they have 2 things to choose from. One is an Assessor Manual, which is a document of approximately 200 pages that includes all the tasks and all the answer keys and all the rubrics and all the explanations, and it's a tutorial on how to mark and what the considerations are, etc., etc., etc. So it's really a training manual, if you like, and it's a PDF form. It's a PDF document, and they can print it out and keep it, or they can refer back to it from the website, although they normally wouldn't need to, and I'll show you why. So once I'm ready, I click on Mark Activities, and then what I get, and you see the blue name of participant that I put on out of confidentiality, but actually there is a name there. And so as the assessor, what you see is you see the names of all the test takers, and then you click on the first one or whatever you wish, and you have all of these tasks that you need to mark. So you see that each assessor marks, each participant has 6 different files, or even more, that have been, usually more. This one was,
Some of these have been marked.
Yeah, oh, that's right, some of them.
When they're marked,
It's usually,
they're
how
so
many are
there's
these?
6,
Like 8 or?
11, 12, 18, 15.
Yeah, so there are quite a few. So these files include things that have been submitted. It's voice messages, it's emails that they wrote, it's an interaction. It's an interaction with a client, and I'll give you just a little bit of an idea of what a standardized interaction with a client looks like online in an asynchronous environment. So one of the disadvantages, of course, one of the advantages of OSCEs is that it is an interactive, alive, and realistic scenario as much as it can be in a simulated environment. The downside is that it's expensive, you need a site for it, you need trained actors, and you need for the actors to act consistently regardless of whether they had a good day or whether the person next to them pissed them off, or whether how they react or respond or what have you. But in a asynchronous simulation, what we do is there is a screen. If you think about Skype conversation, you have the person you talk to and you have yourself on the same screen on a video. And what we did is we created scenarios where the client was pre-recorded, and there are 5 sections to this scenario, and it doesn't matter what how the respondent responds, it's still a logical flow of the events. And so it's fully standardized. It's not given to the mood of the simulator or his or her availability. And so, for example, in our simulation, we have 3 different scenarios of clients, but each of these scenarios have 5 components. First component, which is the meet and greet piece. The second component, which is a gratitude piece and how you respond to it. The third piece is about asking questions and inquiring, where you need to use information from a file that you've read in the previous task. Then the fourth is the client is really angry, disagreeing with you, wouldn't comply, so you need to deal with frustration and resistance. And then the last one is, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll do it, so what do I need to do next? So it's the wrap-up. And so you have a whole sequence, and the assessor will see, you see here task 18A, 18B, 18C. These are the steps of the simulation, and you open each of them and you assess them based on the standard. So this is what it will look like. Once you decide to assess, you open, and what you see is you see a rubric at the back, but you see 3, if you look at the orange top buttons, you have view submitted assignment. So you open, and that's the window that you see. So this is a real participant, so we concealed his face. And so you see, and you hear the whole spiel of this participant. But if you don't remember what was he supposed to be doing, you click on the view assignment description and the answer key. So you actually, online, you don't even need the manual, because in any given point of assessment, you can view the task the same way that the participant viewed it. You can view the answer key, and the answer key corresponds with the rubric. So every line in the rubric is say, well, in trust building, so for example, strategic thinking, blah, 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 make sure, ask whether they would require or offered help with acquiring a wheelchair, or spoke of some other reasonable next steps, for example, blah, blah. So it's really content. It's not general descriptions of did well. These are very, very concrete descriptions of what would be the proper or the appropriate or the competent response in this particular case, in this particular scenario. So all of these things are available to the assessor, and then you go row by row. And for example, effective writing, there's the description. So correctly selected at least 5 out of the 6 check type, whatever. So it's as exact and as objective as it can get. And then you open it and you select the score. And these are set scores. You can't feed in, so they go in increments of 20%. Because that's how the rubric is laid out, and as you fill it up, the score is automatically calculated and fed into the system. And to wrap up, so if you look at this system, so this system is a post-pilot, and we're now in final fine-tuning processes until end of December, and then we will be done with this project until the next step, which will be more research, more pilot, more rollout, etc. if you've ever developed an online tool, you will know that developing this kind of a tool with this kind of a capacity within a year is nothing else than nothing short of a miracle. And we're very happy with this tool, but by no means is it its last iteration or a final appearance, because of course in every tool there are things to improve, there are things to add. Every day we come up with a new idea. Oh, we need this as well, let's add that as well. So it's an ever-evolving tool, and it will still be tested by the two professions and refined. The biggest disadvantage or the biggest problem with such a tool is that you need funds up front to develop it. These are not cheap tools to develop. However, once you have the funding and you've developed it, then all the pros come into play. Then you have a tool that is sustainable, transparent, informative, accessible, relevant, transferable. All these wonderful words that we always want to think about are assessment tools.